The Atlanta Braves need to dramatically shake things up on the roster. What would that look like? Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today, a production of the Belief Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, author of the Braves Today newsletter over at bravestoday.com. We're going to talk about the St. Louis Cardinals, the surprising season they're having, what's driving that. We'll do all of that in the last segment. But before we get there, rough road trip. We talked about it yesterday. Atlanta needs to change the vibes and shake things up. There's a couple different ways you can do that. The most obvious and the simplest thing to do is something that you saw Atlanta actually try last week. The Braves scored 13 runs on the road trip. 6 of them came on Tuesday's game in San Diego, where Walt Weiss admitted that he was trying to just do some stuff differently and provide a jolt to the offense, right? And so the lineup in this one was incredibly interesting. Top 3 were guys you'd expect. Michael Harris led off, Ozzie Albies at second, Matt Olson at first. Dominic Smith went to left field. First time he's played the outfield in a couple seasons. Mauricio Dubón at shortstop, right? Rowdy Tellez checked in at DH. And so you had a different set of guys in there. And it was one of those like, hey, let's get some energy. Okay. Braves scored 4 runs in the second inning. Now, that's the same game, unfortunately, where J.R. Ritchie gave up 5 runs in the bottom of the second inning, and you ended up losing this game 7-6. But for at least a night, the new lineup in the shakeup worked, right? Dom Smith singled to open the second. Dubón singled him to third. Baldwin got hit by a pitch. You had Rowdy Tellez single up the middle to score to score 2 runs. Michael Harris doubled to score another run. Matt Olson drew a bases loaded walk. You had guys getting runs, and then you just gave it all back in the bottom half of the inning. So that's the first thing you can do. That's the easiest thing you can do, the simplest thing you can do. I don't necessarily know how much it's going to work again, right? It was something different. You gave it a shot. It worked. And then you just had all the steam taken out because the pitching couldn't hold the lead. But you can channel that same idea, right? You can say, hey, we're going to go and we're going to shake some things up. And let's do it using the minor leagues. I talked about this a little bit yesterday after AA's comments on Sunday, which a lot of people, bad faith actors, misinterpreted. You're not going to see a significant trade made probably until after the All-Star break by anybody, not just Atlanta, right? Anybody. It's just not in the cards right now. So the only way that you can really shake things up or bring in some new vibes is through the minor leagues. Let's talk about some of the guys that you could see come up that if Atlanta wanted to get aggressive at, hey, let's try something new. Let's get a different voice in here, a different skill set. Let's give a guy an opportunity. Here is what you would see. And I think the first thing, the offense has been the problem, and we'll get to the offense. No, let's do the offense now, actually. One of the things that I keep thinking about is it's hard to play Ha-Seong Kim at shortstop every day, right? It's just, we talked about it. Walt Weiss gave him a streak of starts last week because he had seen some good work behind the scenes, and you're at the point now where it's not working out, and there's been nothing to suggest that it's going to get that much better, right? He's drawing some walks, but it's just, there's not like glaring signs that, hey, he's coming out of this. So you've got some options. Option number 1 is you bring up an outfielder to replace him. To replace Mauricio Dubón in the outfield so that Dubón can move back to shortstop. I do think the best configuration is Dubón at shortstop. He's the only guy really in that position group that's been hitting consistently. Jorge Mateo's overperformed. He's been decent. I'm not opposed to him starting. We'll get to that in a minute. But bring up an outfielder. And if you do that, looking at, I think where I struggle is figuring out who it should be, right? Where I have trouble with this is knowing who to call up, right? The two options you have on the 40-man roster in Gwinnett, there's more options than just those two guys. But the two options you have for outfielders on the 40-man roster, you have Brewer Hicklin, you have DaShawn Keirsey. Both of those guys have been added to the 40-man roster this season and then optioned down because they had opt-outs in their minor league deals. And we said, no, we want to keep these guys because we have an injury-prone outfield, right? Ronald's going to be out until after the All-Star break. Michael Harris has had two different stints where he wasn't able to consistently play in the outfield, quad injury and then the back. And yeah, of these two guys, they each have strengths that I think we have to acknowledge, and they each have weaknesses, right? So on paper, Brewer Hicklin is the one that has been more impressive. He's in his final option year as well. So that's why it's one of those like, hey, you might want to see if he can hang at the majors because you have a decision to make on non-tendering him or some sort of DFA in spring training if he doesn't make the club next year. And again, on paper, it's been very good. Brewer Hicklin is hitting in Gwinnett .306 with a .372 on base and a .512 slug, which sounds phenomenal. He's got 13 home runs. He's stolen 24 bags. He's striking out roughly once a game. So we can add a guy with an 884 OPS in AAA that has a little bit of pop and he's 24 for 29 on stolen bases. He's played all three defensive positions. I understand why it would be appealing to say, hey, let's get Brewer Hicklin. Here's the issue with that. And here's what makes this tough. Think about the current configuration of Atlanta's outfield. Mike Yastrzemski is the guy that is in there against righties because he can't hit lefties. Eli White ends up being called on to man the outfield outside of that situation, right? He's the other half of the platoon with Mike Yastrzemski. And he's been okay. He's been better against lefties than righties this year. But he's not amazing by any stretch of the imagination. He's hitting .250 off of lefties, OPS in the sevens, which is, not bad. He really struggles against righties. Brewer Hicklin is hitting .361 against right-handed pitching. .424 on base, .622 slug. It's a 1.046 OPS. 12 of his 13 home runs have come in 203 plate appearances against righties. Against lefties, he's hitting .167 with a .477 OPS. It's a small sample size. It's 79 plate appearances. But the point is, so far, he's been a guy that hits righties versus lefties. I'm not saying you can't use that. You could absolutely stick that into the majors, and it could be Yastrzemski and Hicklin in your corner outfield against right-handed pitching, and that will let you put Dubón at shortstop. That would give you an option. That is a thing you can do. And then you probably would need to start Jorge Mateo against lefties so that Dubón and White can be your corner outfielders. There's a path here. You can make this happen. DaShawn Keirsey is pretty much a similar version. It's the same story, right? Just different numbers. He's hitting .281 with a .732 OPS against righties. He's hitting .185 with a .504 OPS against lefties. He's 29 of 30 on stolen bases. He has 5 home runs in 68 games. So he is, in essence, Diet Brewer Hicklin. He's doing the same thing. There is a move you can make here. It still doesn't necessarily fix all of your problems, especially when you face a lefty. And again, but calling up one of these two outfielders would give you the ability to stick Dubón at shortstop 3/4 of the time, right? You could have him at shortstop against every single righty with these two guys in the lineup. And assuming that these guys can do something close to their defensive performance or to their offensive performance in AAA, assuming they can convert that to the majors, which is not a guarantee. They haven't done it in any of their shorter previous stretches. You could see this working out, right? The other option is call up Jim Jarvis. And hard part here, I'm not saying that Jim Jarvis is the guy. I'm not saying that he would probably even be your starter at shortstop. This is more of a move when you move on from Ha-Seong Kim. But let him play shortstop. He has been, if you look at the guys who have actual qualifying, who actually have, or actually qualify for the trip, for the Gwinnett leaderboards, right? Not just Greg Baldwin's one game. Jim Jarvis has the second best OPS, the best batting average, and I think the best on base of anybody. He's hitting .313 in AAA with a .408 on base and a .462 slug. He's performed very well. And he's 1 for 5 in the majors. He got 2 starts, I believe, and didn't even finish those games. And he's hit lefties pretty decently in the minors this year. Not as good as getting righties. .330 average, .899 OPS against righties, .271 average, .788 OPS against lefties. And everything's down across the board. On base is down, slugging's down. He's not as good against lefties as righties. But if you wanted to keep Dubón in the outfield and do something where Mateo and Jarvis were the guys who mixed it at shortstop, you could try that. It just offensively, you've got to do something. You've got to make a change. And until you can get a trade done, which again is probably not going to be till after the All-Star break because teams aren't willing to trade. That's not Alex Anthopoulos not wanting to do it. That's not him building in an excuse. That is the reality that national baseball reporters have talked about that everybody is dealing with right now. You cannot make notable trades right now, unless, of course, you wanted to send your top 4 prospects for a marginal upgrade and just massively overpay. A lot of teams are still in it. They're not willing to make moves. You got to fix this internally for right now. You got a month. You got to piece this together from the guys you already have in the organization. So there's an option, right? And you can make roster spots for these guys easily. There is zero reason to carry Dom Smith and Rowdy Tellez. None. Not a single one. They are backup first basemen that swing lefty and are platoon guys. Zero reason to carry them both. You could move anyone. You could move either one, and it'd probably be Rowdy to add one of those guys right now. Zero reason. So this is doable. In just a minute, pitching-wise, little bit tougher, but there's a starting rotation option you can call up right now. Let's talk about Owen Murphy. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, this episode's brought to you by our friends at IQ Bar, our exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. IQ Bar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe mushroom-infused coffees are the tasty, low-sugar brain and body fuel that you need to win your day. The Ultimate Sampler Pack's a great way to try all of the IQ Bar products and flavors. You get 9 IQ bars, 8 IQ Mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe sticks. And all IQ Bar products are clean label certified
and entirely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial ingredients. With over 20,000 five-star reviews and counting, more people than ever are fueling their busy lifestyles with IQ Bar's brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom-infused coffees. And the Ultimate Sampler Pack includes all three. Right now, IQ Bar is offering Braves Today listeners 20% off of all IQ Bar products, including the Ultimate Sampler Pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text MLB to 64000. That's MLB to 64000. That's MLB to 64000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details.
The rotation for this series: Martin Perez starts game 1 tonight. Ronaldo Lopez starts game 2 tomorrow. Game 3 is TBD. Could be Grant Holmes, could be Hurston Waldrop. They're going to see what they have to do bullpen-wise in game 2 before they make a decision, it feels like, right? Ronaldo Lopez went just a couple innings last time out. He's still stretching back out after some bullpen work. And so we don't really know what's going to happen for game 3. Could be either one of those guys. Another option for Atlanta could be Owen Murphy. Let's talk about, he's been in Gwinnett for a while. Let's talk about who he is, what he's doing, and why he might be ready. So, reminder here, 2022 first rounder, number 20 overall. And he was actually the first pick in the draft for Atlanta, not J.R. Ritchie. Ritchie was drafted 35th with the second first-round pick Atlanta had. So Murphy was the first guy taken. He got the bigger bonus of the two. But because his Tommy John was later than Ritchie's Tommy John, his path, his time frame was delayed a little bit. And that's why he's not here yet. But when you look at what he's done in Gwinnett and you look at what he offers as a pitcher, you can make the case that he needs to be the guy. So he has the second most innings pitched of any pitcher in Gwinnett this year. He's got 54 and a third innings in Gwinnett. He started the year in Columbus, mind you, pitched there and got promoted. And his stats in Gwinnett: 10 starts, 4.31 ERA, and an 11.41 WHIP. They don't sound that impressive. I think they're also a little bit misleading. And by that, I mean, I think we need to look at over time, as he adjusted to the baseball and the level, what his stats were able to do. So again, not overall, not anything particularly impressive. But here's the thing. His first 3 starts, he allowed a combined 10 earned runs in 13 and 2/3 innings. Because again, reminder, he's adjusting to the baseball. From that point on, his outings, he has 4 quality starts, and he's only once allowed more than 3 runs. 6 1/3, 2 runs, 7 punchies. 6 2/3, 2 runs, 8 strikeouts. 5 innings, 2 runs, 5 strikeouts. 5 innings, 4 runs. Actually, 5 total runs, 4 earned, 6 strikeouts. 6 innings, 1 run, 10 strikeouts. 6 innings, 2 runs, 6 strikeouts. 5 2/3, 3 runs, 5 strikeouts. Grand total of 4 home runs in that entire stretch, covering 7 starts. So much better after he adjusts to the baseball. And when you look at what he does, one of the things I've harped on a lot on the newsletter, on here, is about pitchers and Atlanta's back end options not being able to generate whiffs, right? It's been a complaint of mine. It came up with J.R. Ritchie. It's coming up with Bryce Elder. You can be successful without it, right? Martin Perez is doing it. Owen Murphy is a different type of pitcher than J.R. Ritchie, right? J.R. Ritchie is the type of pitcher that survives and gets by on locations and weak contact and ground balls. And when some of those things falter, like the locations, we've seen too many walks from Ritchie in the majors, he struggles. Owen Murphy can do it via whiffs. He throws 6 pitches. 4 of them have whiff rates of 30% or better. 1 of them is over 40%. And the difference in Murphy and some of the other guys, in Ritchie, or even a guy like a Herson Waldrop, is Owen Murphy's forcing fastball is legitimately a very good pitch. It's not perfect, mind you. I'd love for him to have a little more oomph on it. He sits 92 on the foot. Owen Murphy is the player, if I had the ability to give 2 mile an hour to anybody in the organization, Owen Murphy's the guy. If he's throwing 95 and not 90, if he's throwing 94 and a half and not 92 and a half, this is a much different conversation. But it's got elite shape. And I've talked to people in baseball outside of the Braves who are impressed with the shape of the pitch and all his pitch shapes in general. His ability to spin the ball, how unique his release traits are compared to the rest of the league, just being a little different as far as whether it's extension, release point, being unique enough to be different. The only real problem with Owen Murphy, when I talk to these people, is his velo, sitting 92, 93. But because that four-seamer is still a very unique pitch, it gives him the ability to get whiffs easier than it did a J.R. Ritchie, or than it does a Martin Perez, or when it comes to the four-seam fastball, even a Herson Waldrop. Waldrop does not have a good fastball shape. And Waldrop has to mix in the four-seamer and the sinker and the cutter to keep guys off balance. Murphy has those pitches, but he doesn't necessarily need them because the four-seam fastball is bad. He just has them to better sequence. The four-seam fastball for Owen Murphy gets a 28% whiff rate. While we're at it, the sinker gets a 31% whiff rate. The cutter gets a 32% whiff rate. Granted, this is AAA. This is not the majors. Different caliber of hitter, right? But because of that, because the fact that he can miss bats with the fastball, the slider's over a 40% whiff rate when it sits at 86 miles an hour. I'm sorry. And it sits at 86 miles an hour. I'm not saying the whiff rate's contingent on the velocity. It sits at 86 miles an hour and has a whiff rate of over 40%. The curveball is in the high 70s. It has a whiff rate of 32%. The changeup is real close to 30%. It's 8% or something like that. The changeup's right there as well. So it's good shapes. It's a good ability to spin. He's been able to go deeper into games. And the big thing that stands out when you see these 6 inning, 6 1/3, 6 2/3, is he's not been terribly inefficient, right? 6 2/3 against Nashville, 2 runs, 8 strikeouts, 91 pitches. He's not throwing a Maddox anytime soon. But the point is, he's not firing off 100 pitches to get through 5 innings, right? He theoretically would be able to give you some length. Now, the problem you have here is Owen Murphy's not on the 40-man roster. And you don't really have the ability, checking the depth chart real quick, you don't really have the ability to buy yourself a 40-man roster spot through putting somebody on the 60-day IL, right? Because your options here is you have Kyle Farmer, who went down on May 15th. He's in rehab, starts now. He's playing catcher. He homered for Columbus on Sunday at catcher. If you were to put him on the 60-day, you wouldn't get him back until July 15th. And I feel like they probably, my impression based on the timing is that you're probably going to see him before the All-Star break. Ronald Acuna Jr. went down in June. So if you want him after the All-Star break, if you do this, you're looking at August if you put him on the 60-day IL. And then outside of that, it's Robert Suarez, who just has some elbow inflammation, and we were told as of now they think it's going to be the minimum, so you can't do that. So you have to get rid of somebody. And so it's what pitchers can you get rid of? That's the thing. Like, you can find pitchers in the organization to move on from, right? I don't know necessarily who it's going to be, but they could figure out something. All the low-hanging fruit here is gone. But they could find a way. They could find a way to get rid of somebody. And if they do that, Owen Murphy would not be the worst option in the world to get some starts. I would not mind giving him a shot. The other thing to point out here is he is Rule 5 eligible this winter. So he's going to have to go on the 40-man roster anyway. You might as well see what you have in him before you do it. Just a thought. In just a minute, let's talk about the Cardinals, right? I just mentioned who we have starting, but let's talk about them because I think the perception going into the season was about them going to be rebuilding. They moved on from Sonny Gray. They moved on from Wilson Contreras. They moved on from Nolan Arenado. And it turns out that despite some of those moves, they're a better team than I think anybody expected. We'll talk about that next, right here on Braves Today. The Cardinals entered this season with low expectations, right? They moved on from the guys I mentioned. They also, Brendan Donovan, forgot about that. He's a guy I wanted Atlanta to actually go get. I believe he's from South Alabama, grew up a Braves fan, like a lot of people in the South do. And so wanted him to, Braves to go grab him because he could play second or third or short or outfield. They went with Dubón instead. I think Dubon's a better defensive player, but I would have liked Donovan. Anyway. They're being carried offensively by two or three guys, and I think there's a little bit of surprise as to how some of these guys are doing, right? The biggest story here is Jordan Walker. He's on his final option year. He had massively struggled. Like, negative WAR player up until this year. When you combine his first three seasons, knowing that he was not bad his first year, his first three seasons hitting 240 with a slug of under 400. And for a guy as big as he is, that was disappointing to everybody. And 16 of those home runs came in that first rookie year of his. This year, he's hitting 290 with an 859 OPS and 18 home runs already, and he's only played 79 games. It hurts, right? He's an Atlanta native. He's from Stone Mountain, Georgia. He went to Decatur High School. I was hoping, he was one of the players that I was saying if he becomes a change of scenery candidate, I could absolutely see the Braves going and trying to grab Jordan Walker, letting him continue to play outfield, and hoping that maybe you bring him home and it's going to work out. It's finally worked out this year. Jordan Walker is a much better player than he's been previously in his career. So he's guy number one. Guy number two is prospect J.J. Weatherholt. No longer a prospect, actually. Number 7 overall pick in 2024. They debuted him this season, and he hit the opening day, right? He hit the ground running. He was 1 for 4 on opening day and pretty much hasn't stopped hitting since. The batting average isn't stellar, right? 265 average, 771 OPS, but it's like a 120 OPS plus, 12 homers, stolen 9 bags. He's just provided a lot of stability at second. He's filled in a little bit at short. He made 2 starts there. He's played like 15 innings. But he's just been a defensive machine as far as getting ground balls at second, funnel him over to first, and making the outs. He has one of the highest assist totals in all of baseball at 223, despite being a second baseman. Like, not even a shortstop, a second baseman, because he has got good range and everything. Offensively, he's not the same level as these guys, but Mason Wynn, he's batting 244, 648 OPS, but he's been a good defender at shortstop. And then moving on from Contreras gave them the ability to install Alec Burleson at first base. And he's their second best power hitter. He's got 13 home runs, hitting 280 at first base, 824 OPS. That's a very welcome sight for a lot of people. Really loving to see that. And so offensively, like, it's a somewhat dangerous offense. That being said, they haven't played like a dangerous offense this month. In the last 30 days, they've scored 120 runs, which looks like tied for 16th in baseball. Now, they're getting on base a lot. 265 average, 340 on base in that stretch. The 340 is fifth best in baseball. The 265 average is ninth best in baseball. They're getting on a lot. They're just not always converting these into runs. Some of it's a lack of power. Their 26 home runs are 27th in the last 30 days. Atlanta is 29th in the last 30 days with 21 home runs. So thou shalt not cast stones, right? By the way, the Braves are hitting 214 in that stretch, which is the worst mark in baseball. We talked about a lot of that yesterday. A lot of those worst in baseball numbers did not change after the off day. I'll put it that way. Atlanta still has the worst batting average, the worst on base, and close to, if not the worst slug in the last 30 days. So a lot of that didn't change. But it's a better offense, and it's a good defense than I think a lot of us were expecting it to be coming into the year. After moving on from a Contreras, after moving on from a Nolan Arenado that can't really hit anymore, but was still a decent defender. He's not the amazing defender he had been, but he's still a pretty decent defender out there. So that's the first thing to be aware of is, okay, the offense is better than maybe we've given them credit for. They do also, by the way, have Lars Nootbaar back. And if you're looking for someone to watch for the trade deadline, if the Cardinals sell, and that's not a guarantee, but either at the trade deadline or in the offseason, Lars Nootbaar is potentially a guy that Atlanta may try to get. We had a lot of talk about him in the offseason, but he had heel surgery, so he just wasn't available until he's only played 20 games this year. He's hitting 294 with an 866 OPS in those games. He's played left, he's played center, he's played right. He's mostly a left fielder, but he's perpetually a guy that's been on the verge of a breakout and has never quite taken that final step. He's got one more year team control after this, and I could see the Cardinals potentially moving on from him if they like the outfield group that they have, right? Having Jordan Walker, having Nathan Church in center, or whoever else it might be. That's part of the problem, too, is some of their outfielders. Victor Scott wasn't hitting, and so they've sent him down to AAA. Joshua Baez is ready to debut, though. So maybe because they have a couple center field options, or a couple outfield options, they move on from Nootbaar. We'll see what happens. Anyway, something to watch for there. When you look at the pitching staff, this is really where you get surprised by how good the Cardinals have been, because they moved their best guy in Sonny Gray, and yet they're getting some decent performances. Michael McGreevy, 3.12 ERA. Andre Palante, 3.83 ERA. Good performances. Are those over performances based on FIP and expected ERA? Sure, but still not bad. The one to be mindful of here is Dustin May. Okay, I want everybody to understand the risk of underrating Dustin May, because the surface numbers are not great. 5-6, .430 ERA. One, his expected ERA is not only better than that, his FIP. His FIP is a 332. It's much better than his ERA. It's a full run better. His expected ERA is kind of in the middle, right? 368. But he also has a complete game shutout on his ledger this season. And when you look at him from a stuff perspective, right? He's back to throwing upper 90s on his four-seam fastball. He's also throwing a cutter and a sinker. He's got a sweeper. He's got a changeup. He's got a curveball. It's a lot of horizontal east and west kind of game he's running, but he does have the ability to work north and south with the four-seam fastball and the curveball off of it. He doesn't throw the curveball a ton. His least used pitch at 7%. But I really do think that there's a path here. And I do think the lefties are really going to struggle with four-seam cutter, sweeper, which is the mix that he throws against lefties. Which, by the way, is very unusual. Sweepers have the largest platoon splits of any breaking ball. Because if you think about it, if you're a righty and you're throwing a sweeper to a righty, it's going to move away from them out of the zone. Okay, that total sense. Perfect sense. He throws it, it's his third most used pitch to lefties because he can locate it. He can bring it, he can throw it where it looks like it's going to be over the plate and then it's going to break in on their hands. He can throw a pitch that looks like it's going to be in the opposite batter's box and then it catches the edge of the zone. It backdoors you. So it's an unusual profile. It's an uncomfortable at-bat. And so you've got a Matthew Liberatore in game one tonight, and we'll break down more about what he does specifically in the scouting report this afternoon. We do that every day. It's live on YouTube and actually on X as well. And then there's a written version and an audio version that drop immediately after. We'll break down what he does. Liberatore's the one where you're like, okay, this isn't the hardest matchup in the world. Yes, he's a lefty. It's a 5.56 ERA, a 5.26 FIP, and he's given up 17 home runs this year. So, okay, not the hardest matchup in the world. Granted, the Braves are bad right now. Everybody's a hard matchup, but it's either going to be a get-right game for Matthew Liberatore or you're going to be able to get to him. We'll see what happens there. But Michael McGreevy, again, 3.12 ERA. He's been their best starter. The FIP is worse, but statistically, he's been their best starter. He's not a strikeout guy. He's really not a strikeout guy. So he's going to let you put balls in play, but this defense has been very good. That's your problem here. And then you get May in game 3. It's a tough series. It really legitimately, it's a tougher series than we want it to be right now, given how this team is playing. That's the frustrating part. And then after this, you get 4 against the Mets this weekend. Braves Today sponsor FanDuel does still have Atlanta favored to win. As of Tuesday morning, on the money line, Atlanta is favored. Over-under of 9.5 runs. They think a lot of runs are going to be scored between Liberatore and Perez. So we'll see what happens. Atlanta's going to have to go with their lefty lineup. We'll see how it looks. But that'll do it for Braves Today. Please like the video. Please subscribe both here and at bravestoday.com. I did a fun thing this morning talking about the draft over on the newsletter and how Derek Curiel at number 9 is a pretty safe pick according to a lot of prognosticators and draft analysts. But Atlanta probably doesn't need to play it safe because, knock on wood, fingers crossed, whatever, they won't be picking at number 9 that often, right? They're probably going to be back in the 20s after this year. So do you go for impact talent or do you go for a safe MLB slightly above average outfielder? We'll see what happens. But again, that'll do it for Braves Today. Please like the video, please subscribe. We'll talk to you next time.